Hey everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and another episode of the Indie Show. Tonight we're talking 8 Billion Genies, and I got my friends Dave Mayers. What's going on, Adam?
Doing
How
good.
are you?
Doing great.
Doing good. And Jay Hood Comics, who hasn't been on my channel for a while because I'm a slacker and don't ask enough. But
definitely not your fault. I've been around here and there, but yeah, it's good to be on tonight. Get to talk about a new fresh comic. At least it's fresh to me.
So this was a first read for all of us. I feel like this has been the we all waited for the hardcover apparently. So this was kind of the buzz book of the last almost 2 years, year and a half, something like that. It's been, like a ton of people have talked about this series. So before we dig into the details here, just a general, what were your thoughts going in? Did it live up to expectations? What did you think here? Because you'd heard a ton of buzz, I assume, before you dug into it. So, Adam, what about you? What did you think? Was it what you expected, I guess?
No, not really. I really liked it. I did. I really liked it. I really didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
But, because I didn't, I just heard the title. I didn't hear a whole lot about the premise behind it. Always heard people saying good things about it. But it's definitely a different story than I was expecting just off the title and not much else, background that I'd heard.
No. What about you, Jay Hood? What did you think going in?
Proof that I've got it. I really didn't have a feeling or opinion going in either. I had heard of the premise and I thought it was very intriguing. The idea that these genies pop up and everybody gets one. And I was interested, where they would take it. Is it going to be a more grounded story? Is it going to be a more like a fantasy story? It definitely was just interesting just to dive in and get to see what all the hype was about. I felt it was a little bit interesting at the time where when it first came out, the first few issues were out, it was getting a lot of talk, a lot of chatter was going on about it. And then it kind of died away. And I never really heard, did people like how it wrapped up? The fervor over it just kind of died towards in the middle. So
I think there was a bit of a delay, and the later issues coming out was part of that.
I thought that might have been the case too.
Yeah. So I didn't acknowledge initially. I will acknowledge the chat. I'm going to start with this guy here talking about. So I will say I had a little more than just the premise because I had watched their monthly when they were first reading it, their monthly show. Mm-hmm. So about through I think the first 3 issues, I listened to their discussion about it before. And after that, I no, I'm going to read that one. So I stopped listening after that. Whenever they would start talking about it, I would mute and stop listening to what they were saying. But so I had a little better feel for where it was going, at least initially. Still went places I did not expect. And I enjoyed the heck out of it. So I'm looking forward to talking about it with you guys. Yes, we were, and we'll go back to John's other comment about me hide my lateness. It was not my lateness. It was my forgetfulness. As I set it up for 8 o'clock, and then Jamie got here and he's like, "Are we doing this at 8 or 8:30 or 9 or 9:30 for you?" And I was like, I don't know. And then I had to go back and look, and I promised Dave Mayers 8:30. So yeah, we have a man. GT Key was in here when he thought we were going to start. I don't know if he's come back in or not. Gordon stopped by as well. So lies. No, it was. I have witnessed.
No, it was originally set up for 8:30.
Yeah, I just forgot
because I didn't know if I'd be around. I didn't know if I'd have
the time. Yes.
Yeah.
No, when I look back at the chat, it's right there. I
thought I'd missed a memo, but yeah, I'm here regardless.
You made it. You made it. You both made it. So yes, lies.
And I actually saw John's and White Whale whenever their year-end cap.
Oh, their year-end thing.
It made #1 on both of them, and I was like, oh. Yeah. And I had just gotten it in that day that they did that, and I was like, oh, I really got to read it now, Yeah. So that hyped me up a little bit for it. So I think it might have been a little bit better if I wouldn't have heard that.
Yeah.
And it let me
Set
down,
your
but you know,
expectations a little bit. Well, they're kind of snobs, so I didn't know if I'd
yeah, I mean they're kind of snobs, and they're
Well,
they're different kinds of snobs.
I
So
I,
for
I,
both
I
of them to
rarely
agree on something, I thought that
I rarely agree with John on just about anything. So I thought, well, if he liked it, I don't know.
yeah, or so.
well, and and then, but to me it was like Whitewell and John both liked it.
Yeah,
That's
I mean, it's usually a pretty good sign that it's pretty solid if both of them
yeah,
like it, because they do have a slightly different taste. I mean, similar but different, and it's usually they agree more on the things that annoy them than they necessarily agree on the things that they love. So,
and for this to be both of theirs number one, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Hey, Tony, what is going on? Well, let's dig into this because we got a lot of ground to cover because 8 issues. So we won't do quite as much detail here as maybe I usually do. But we decided to do this all in one evening. So we start off with this little hole-in-the-wall bar in the middle of Michigan. And we get kind of a cast of characters, the local bar owner, what appears to be the local drunk and his kid, a band that's just trying to get a gig that doesn't appear like it's going to pay much because there's nobody in there. We get a few people that are lost. We just get this eclectic group of people that are in this bar, and out of nowhere, these guys show up. So what did you think about this whole start here of how like they set this up like these kind of average looking people, and then suddenly these weird, I mean, obviously you knew the title of the thing. Like what did you think when the genies showed up and they kind of actually gave you the premise of what was going on here? Jamie, what did you think?
Yeah, I'm totally into like slice of life comics, works like Blankets and Strangers in Paradise and stuff like that. So I was ready for something that was going to be pretty well grounded, but prepared also for something to kind of take us a little bit further from there. So yeah, I like the opening, getting to know the characters you mentioned, very grounded. And so yeah, once the genius showed up, I was like, okay, let's go. What's next?
No. What about you, Dave Maris? What did you think?
Same thing. I mean, it was neat to sort of get a grounded reality, day to day sense of these people before everything just changed.
Yeah. So what do you think of, before we get in here, as the artist in our group here, Jay Hood, what do you think of how Ryan Brown designed these genies? What did you think about the concept and how he did this?
Actually, I like the genies themselves a lot, and I really had to overcome my somewhat dislike for the rest of the style.
Yeah.
He feels, his art style to me feels like a very indie kind of, I don't want to say untrained, and I don't want to discount his work because he's published 8 issues here, and it tells a cohesive story. So he's a good storyteller. Maybe the technique, the surface level of the art isn't up to my standards, but yeah, actually, I really like the genies themselves. Yeah. So, and I like the fact that he really did a real departure as far as style goes with the kind of the space background and incorporating them into the character designs.
Yeah. I mean, they do definitely, like, he does have a rough, like you said, kind of, and I don't think maybe indie's not the right word anymore because this is an indie nowadays. Like some indies have very, big budgets and are fairly polished and that kind of stuff. But right. Like, more of a, I don't know, grimy is not the word, but I think of it as more of like a grimy, like just unfinished style.
It's an unrefined style. You could say.
Unrefined maybe is the better word. Yeah. I don't dislike it, and I do think it fits. And I do think when he gets into, I think some of his strength is, as we get later into the book, when he's mixing, like, his stuff, like when he's mixing craziness of what's happening in the world with the genies, with these people that are in his style, with the genies themselves, and you get some crazy panels later on. I think is really his strength, and I do love what he does with the genies themselves. What about you, Damon? What do you think of the art here? Before we get
similar, one thing I really loved about the genies is how that they're all different. They're not just sort of cookie cutter, the exact same thing. They're all kind of suited towards, their, I don't want to say host, but, their own, not even owner, just their wish holder.
Right.
There we go.
They're a bit of a mirror, yes, of the wish holder themselves, for sure. Because you see, like one has glasses, and the one for the lady in the band has like a back, or like has the back. They have backpacks for the travelers, and they have, the one has a beard for the bartender, and so we get this, and we get the proposition of, hey, everybody gets a wish. Like everybody in the whole world gets a wish, and we see the bartender instantly make his wish, which is basically, as we learn later in the book, is basically he makes the bar a haven. Like wishes from outside this bar cannot affect the bar, and like he does, or the people inside, or anything inside it, basically. So he seems to. Which we'll find out later why, but like he seems to instantly know what he wants. What did you think when you got this immediate reaction from the bartender here?
My first thought was that was a very well crafted wish.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that was very quick and very specific.
Mm-hmm.
And like
that was my first thought is like that is, very, protective, defensive, and just odd to me, at the time. I was like, that is, how someone came up with that specific of a wish within 8 seconds.
And
giving me all the money in the world,
we realized the specificity of it in the moment, but as I was reading it, I didn't think too hard about it, that it would be that unreasonable for someone to come up with it.
No. I didn't either. But I was like, wow, that was my first thought was, wow, that's really specific and a really good wish. I don't know if I would have came up with one that good at that,
right.
But I didn't read too much more into it than that.
I would agree. Like in the moment, reading it the first time, and again, this is one of those where I listened to John and I talk about. So I knew about the bartender's wish to a certain degree. So I didn't know about what we find out later, but like I knew about his wish, and I was like, oh, and reading the way it's executed, I'm like, that's just a really smart. And they portray him as a guy who's like, plans for anything and all this kind of stuff, and it's like, okay, this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, he's a prepper going in. He's got his basement full of goods.
Yeah,
but, if the zombie apocalypse comes, he's going to be the most prepared.
Yeah. So as we go through this, we get everyone else's kind of what's happening with the rest of the people in the bar. And for the most part, nobody else makes a quick wish. Like everybody else is like, what is happening? Like trying to process this. The one quick wish we get is outside the bar, 2 members of the band. One of the guys is hitting on the girl because he's got a crush on her, and she's like, no, she's kind of putting him off and that kind of stuff. And then the instant the genies appear, she's like, I want the other guy. And like a very what you would think of, and you even see it like within the first 8 minutes, whatever it is, like over 1 million people have made their wish in the first 8 minutes. Like it's, they're, because we get these tallies as we go through this.
2 million people have made their wish, and there's 1 million less people.
And there's 1 million less people already. Yes. Yeah. 2 million people have already made their wish. And within the first 8 minutes, and there's already 1 million less people. You are correct. And the world is a keep. Like, and so I know, Tony, that is a big mistake. So, but yeah, she makes a very and does it in front of the other guy who's starts to make his wish and doesn't. And she runs into the bar only to find out that her wish doesn't work because he was in the bar and he is protected by the bartender's wish. So
I thought it was interesting that he absolutely wanted no part of her either.
Right. Yeah. He was not interested at all, which we'll find out a little bit later why that was too, as we get deeper into the story. But yeah, he had no interest at all. And so she was very sort of, it was obviously a pretty greedy, selfish kind of wish. It's taking away his agency. I want him to do this. But also probably I would guess of those 2 million wishes, she's probably a couple 100,000 probably made a similar kind of wish, for somebody. So what did you think of her wish and what kind of the fallout from her wish here? And this, I forget, what is her name? Gosh dang it. I should know. I just read this, but.
Daisy,
yes. Yeah, because of the bad. It's, because of the way they're.
I thought
Brian, Eric, and Daisy. Or Brian, Aaron, and Daisy, sorry.
I thought it was interesting that this is how they're starting off the book, and these characters will play through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And just I don't want to say what happens to them, but kind of what doesn't, because between the three of them, they keep two of their wishes through almost the entire thing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. The people in this bar, this little cross section, other than her and the bartender, nobody makes an impulsive wish.
Right.
None of this group makes an impulsive wish.
Because I think that one of the first things they do is look outside and see what hell on earth is.
And this is where I think, in addition to the genies themselves, is where I think he kind of shines. The art shines in this book is when we get panels like this where he's portraying the craziness of what is coming out of these wishes.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least for me, does that art work better for you, Jay? I'm just curious.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's scenes like that are also colored vastly different from the rest of the interior, where it's kind of a dingy bar, so everything is in dingy colors, and then when we go outside and all the craziness is happening, we get a rainbow of fruit flavors, so to speak, as far as the colors go. So it's definitely a real departure.
Yeah, so we see the craziness of the kinds of wishes people are making just instantly.
And I think that would happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd say that, half of them would probably be gone in the first 15 minutes.
If anything, I think they're overly conservative about their portrayal of how slowly the wishes come off the board.
Yep.
If you want, truthfully, 8 billion and there's 2 million gone in the first 8 minutes, I'm guessing there would be more like 2 billion gone in the first 8 minutes.
Yeah. Because how many people, especially if they were by themselves and didn't realize that everybody in the world got one and thought about those ramifications, wouldn't just be,
tell you that everyone's getting a wish?
He did, but I meant...
Yeah, but it might not really register, if you're by yourself, for sure.
Because it was one genie that said, hello, it's a great pleasure to meet you. And then another one said, every person on earth now has a genie. I don't know how much of that would have happened if they weren't in a group,
True.
And also if a genie appears and says you get a wish and, I wish you be, rich, that would be how many people's first.
Right. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and we see we get a whole 2-page spread of I want more money than I know what to do with. I wish I could teleport. I want to walk again. I want to be young again. I want to fly. We're getting all of these. I wish you'd both even the ones that are negative here that you don't really expect the teenage daughter like destroying her own parents because she's mad at them in the moment. I want to become a soccer star. You get all of this kind of stuff, and like all of this is happening in the first 8 minutes, and that is our first issue. And then we jump to issue 2, and it's the first 8 hours. So what do you think about the structure of how he tells us? First 8 minutes, first 8 hours, first 8 months, first 8 year, as we go through this.
I think it's extremely helpful to understand what he's doing time-wise in the story. So if we didn't have these splash pages that told us that, I think it'd become a much more confusing read. But it is interesting how kind of the time frame speeds up as we go through the series. Right. And honestly, that's not something that I really picked up on until I got to maybe issue 5 or 6.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it lays it out right at the beginning of each issue, like after the first one, because we get a splash page in issue 1 of the first 8 seconds, and then we get to the start of issue 2, and then we get also a first 8 minutes, I think, too, in that first issue, and then issue 2, and it's first 8 hours, and we get our total, and now the planet is an ice cream cone, and we've seen there's been 1.5 billion wishes made, and we're down 800 million people from, the population is plummeting rapidly. And we get one view of, and it turns out to be a character that becomes important later, but a father who makes a wish right at the quickly that to keep his kids from making wishes because he doesn't want them making some crazy, irresponsible, dangerous wish. And we'll see how this plays out as the story goes along. And we don't really get to know this character other than this moment and that he does this. But what did you think about that? You're both dads. What did you think about this dad making this choice to try to protect / limit his kids in this moment?
I mean, it's the responsible thing to do. I don't think I'd be that smart about it. I think I'd be right off the bat just more obsessed with, okay, what am I going to wish for? Because I don't know, a selfish jerk, I guess. But
well, it is though, it is because he's thinking about it. Everybody gets a wish. You got it from the last person, and the genie says to the infants, from infants to folks in their deathbed, and he looks outside, and he does see 2 giant corn stalks fighting each other. It's like, wait a second. Runs up and finds that one of his kids has already wished for all the toys he could want, and it's so he does get a little bit of a prompt here. But Adam, what about you? What did you think of this father's choice here?
I thought it was a great one, at this time frame. With his kids being the age they are and all that type of stuff that, I hope I would think of something like that at that time frame, But like Jamie said, I don't know if that probably wouldn't be the first thing on my mind,
No.
I mean, okay, let's pause. Let's just do a pop quiz. How long do you think it would take you before you made your wishes?
That's a good question.
If I didn't make it in the first 8 minutes or less, it would probably be a while.
That's I kind of agree. See that I think if I didn't make something impulsive in the first, I even say maybe first minute, 2 minutes.
Yeah. I
probably would not make the wish for a while. Because I would now I wouldn't hold it as long as some of these people do, because I think I would start thinking through what I would want, but there would definitely be a reaction to what is happening once you made it past that first 8 minutes and realized what the heck was happening around you.
Mm-hmm.
Then it would be okay, I need to how do I craft this to both benefit myself and protect myself from
It becomes a much more defensive position
Yeah, I mean, it goes from being you're making a wish for something that you want in the world you used to be into, to reacting to what is happening now around you.
To not losing that wish, to not losing that world that you was trying to wish yourself out of.
Yes. Yeah. So there is definitely potentially a huge split there. And we see that, he is so as we move into the second issue, we see that our bartender is like a serious prepper. Like, there is serious supplies for a long period of time down here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is not a prepper. Oh, I got a week's worth of supplies for myself. No. This is months of prep. And we continue to see the fallout of Daisy's wish as we go through this. And we also see like the fallout or we learn a little bit about, and they use like the president, and we learn a little bit about the nature of the wishes that overlap or contradict, and how the genies kind of make that work. And it's basically like, you make a dumb wish that everyone else is making. Well, guess what? It just cancels. You get nothing out of it. So it's like, we're going to be the supreme country in the world. And like every leader of every country made the same wish, basically at the same moment.
You definitely get credit from the genies for the more thought or intelligence you put into your wish, I think.
Yeah.
So what do we think about that as we go through this and we see, what do we think about the way the genies handle the wishes? Because they're not, like in some stories you read where the genies are basically evil and they're basically always looking for a way to manipulate your wish.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not necessarily doing that, but they're also not necessarily giving you what you're saying. Like, you have to be very careful. Like, they're also walking through open doors if you give them, but maybe not necessarily in an evil way, but just in another way. So what do you think about how the way the genies handle the wishes? J Hood.
Yeah, I agree. It's tough to say that they're in a neutral position, because I don't get the feeling they are. But yet, like you said, they aren't necessarily, they're not doing this just to kind of, like you said, twist it or turn it back on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of in the beginning. There's going to be malicious, your normal classic genie, from Grimm's fairy tales and stuff like that.
For sure. And
I think it's interesting how much communication the genies do with their wish holder along the way through. I mean, throughout their lifetime, if you haven't used your wish, your genie is there with you the whole time, unless you kind of, I guess, there's
and
a
they'll
way to
literally tell you everything that's happening in the whole world. You just have to ask the right question.
Right.
Well, and as long as it doesn't affect anything, is the way it sort of read. There were a few that was, somebody asking how many, genies were left, and they'd be like, well, we can't tell you that because that would influence, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. Well, that,
Yeah, so they do have rules about that, but for the most part, they're pretty open, and and they get like, they're not gonna. Well, and they even kind of lay it out, like their thought process. They're like, well, if two people are in direct opposition, and they're like, we're not big into stuff that affects the whole world, like, unless we think it's funny or interesting, or like,
that's what I was thinking of. Like, been going back to the ice cream and the square and the.
Mm-hmm.
But they're big on, like, they say, we want as many people as possible to get their wish. So we're not going to, like, if you want to, like, I want everyone gone but me. Like, they're not going to grant that. Like, that's not going to work. And they talk about, it's like, I thought you were against this when you see all the bad things happening. You're like, well, they asked for a lightsaber. They didn't know how to use it, and they burned down a whole city. It's like, gee, you give somebody a plasma, like a burning plasma sword, and, bad things happen.
Yep.
So the next person we see is at the use their wish within the bar, as we get is that both in, yeah, we get 2 more wishes in issue 2. The drunk father that we met in the first issue, we find out why he was drunk, and like that he'd lost his wife, and we get that he wishes for her to come back.
Mm-hmm.
To help him to be there for his son and help him raise their son. And then we get the other father, or soon to be father, wishes for basically a suit that'll help him survive anything. It's basically the way wish to become whatever I need to survive this new world and be able to protect anyone I'm with. So what do you think of these 2 wishes from these 2 fathers? Adam, I realize the first wish is probably pretty personal.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and that's probably
not say whatever you want on that.
No, that is probably what I would wish for.
Yeah.
And it would be hard not to wish for that, in the first 2 or 3 days,
Mm-hmm.
once you make sure everything else is going all right,
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't, it's not a, it's not an instant reaction. Like, he thinks about it. We're still in the first 8 days, but he thinks about it before he makes the wish. And he thinks about, like, how to word it and what he wants to do, like how he wants to do it. And, is there anything else you want to say on that particular thing?
No, I mean, but one of the things I would be afraid of, going back to the normal genie thing, anytime you've ever saw someone wish for someone to be back with a normal genie, it has
like
not turned out well.
Yeah, it doesn't turn out well.
It's
That's
like
right.
Pet Cemetery or something, right?
Yeah.
Well, and they do later. The genies talk about. They explain that as like this is not
A remnant or
like this is not from the moment of death. We picked her and it's a remnant. They explain that it's her, but it's not really her. But they picked her from a time. Like they granted. So it is interesting. Like they can be benevolent. They can be like, because it's like, oh, if they like your wish and the way you do it, they'll kind of help you make it better.
Mm-hmm.
Or they'll read the good part of it. And if they don't like your wish, then they're going to look for ways around. Like, they're making a conscious choice based on their own feelings about the wishes that you're making. Jeha, what do you think about these 2 fathers' wishes as we go through this?
Yeah, I think like you said, the guy that wished for the suit, I don't want to say suit of armor, but it kind of is, but it's also
he kind of gets, that's the way it portrays itself.
Right. He gets all kinds of weapons and all kinds of stuff like that with it, and I think this is another case of he really thought through what he wanted his wish to be and kind of picked the ideal situation, for what his intent was. But we haven't up to this point figured out why he would want that specifically, and that he needed it for even a greater purpose than protecting his family.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because we've seen since they got there, they've been in the wrong place and they're trying to get somewhere else. And he's trying to, and I enjoy, like, it's a funny thing, like, that in this new world, he's still worried about this particular issue that once we find out what it is, it's like,
Right.
Do you think that's really going to matter going forward? But it's something he feels like he has to take care of. And so, yeah. Adam, any other thoughts on the other father's wish to protect the protection wish here?
That was a great wish too. I mean, They both seem to be making very smart wishes,
I will say, like, as we go through this, and the people in this bar, for the most part, make, other than our one impulse wish.
Well, and you can view it that everybody that was in the bar made a good wish.
Yeah.
She happened to be outside, if you eliminate her by saying that she was outside of the bar, know.
I mean, but these people have had the benefit of being protected from everything else that's been going on.
Yes.
I mean, how different would their choices have been if they weren't here and protected by that first wish?
Right. The bartender's wish gives them the luxury of being able to think about their wish.
Yep.
That they're not immediately reacting to something that somebody else has done.
Yep.
And
yeah, because I think that's how a lot of wishes probably were wished was, oh, don't let me die. Or, something along those lines, as a giant foot was coming down from a Mac or something.
Yeah. So at the end of this, we get more dead people, which is an interesting choice. The three, and I don't know that they really matter, but it was just interesting that we get more remnants of other wishes. So we kind of see how that kind of thing works when you wish for the creation of something or the return of something.
I thought
go ahead.
I thought the specific people that were chosen by the authors to introduce to the story at this point, I'm like, well, first of all, I didn't know who they were until the next issue when they start being discussed.
Well, I figured out pretty quickly who Hemingway and Morrison were. Like, even on this page, I'm like, I think that's who they're supposed to be. I had no idea who the lady was. She looked too generic to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But go ahead. Sorry.
No, you kind of wrapped it up there. Yeah, this is where a better, I don't want to say a better artist, a more refined artist, you'd be able to tell the likenesses a little bit better.
Yeah.
I mean, is it Jim Morrison, or is it just a guy that reminds you of Jim Morrison?
Right.
But yeah, I am not well read enough to recognize Hemingway, and if I saw him in a lineup. So,
and it wasn't like just the way I think. Well, he says, "Hi, I'm Ernest," and then you can call me Papa, and I was like, "Wait, is that who that's supposed to be?" Like just from the name and the stuff is what it was, more than his likeness necessarily.
And give me a drink,
and give me a drink, and we realized that all these people that were part of Wishes and then showed up at a bar because that's what they were. That's where they would go in real life, was the bar. I do love how issue 3 opens with somebody who wished to be Santa Claus, apparently. Only to get eaten by the moon. Apparently somebody decided wish the man on the moon was real, I guess, or something. I don't know. But
yeah, I thought the whole moon, like you said, someone thought of that wish to wish for the moon to come alive and eat things as they would come by. I don't know if that would be the first 1,000 things I thought of.
No. I mean, some of these are pretty, as we go through this, I mean, you just see some of these wishes are just freaking weird. There's a slug creature, and there's these floaty blue guys. It's what are these people wishing for?
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to remember there's kids and there's everything else. I mean, there's a castle and there's a guy that's got the loop-de-loop ramp in the background. And and then as we follow Wang on his journey here across town, and he runs into somebody that decided to be a vampire. So, I don't know. I'm trying to think of what were the big moments here. And we do see, though, as we go through this third issue, our remnants start to disappear. And so that there's a reaction there to the father and the son about the mom that's been brought back. And they're like, oh, what do we do if this happens? And it's I'm not going anywhere. Your dad's not going anywhere. We're okay. But you see this kid, starting to worry about, okay, I got to, I saw my wish. I got to protect them. And he starts thinking through what he's going to do with his wish as a kid. And in order to try to protect his family, but we also see what the one guy is doing. Like we find out what he was trying to accomplish as he was going across town. So is there anything big in here that stands out to you guys as we go through this particular issue?
I think this issue, I think things were proceeding to my satisfaction as far as like, okay, where they were going with it, what they were doing as far as, playing out, not the replicants, but what do they call them? The people that are left over from the other wishes that are starting to remnants. That's right.
Yeah.
So I thought that was an interesting thing to kind of like explain that kind of as a rule of, this is one of the things we're dealing with. But yeah, as we went through this, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm still on board. You still got me. Let's keep going through until we get to the end, which I don't want to get that far ahead of ourselves.
Well, yeah, there's stuff in here, but I don't know that there's anything super critical to the story. So it's just anything you want to highlight from this particular issue. Adam, what about you? What do you think until we get to the end? Because I do think there's two things at the end, but anything else in the issue you want to highlight of?
No, I mean, I thought it progressed along pretty good. Added to the story, all that type of stuff, but nothing life-changing in this.
No, it's just continuing to set up. I feel like it's very much a setup of this is how this world is working now. This is the kinds of things you're dealing with before we move into the next kind of phases. Because we see, like, we get kind of two big things at the end. We get Wang returning from his journey and basically like, listen, all of you, I have something to say. There's so many wasted wishes. Like, so they all get a piece of advice for somebody who's journeyed out of this bar, which most of them have stayed in the bar and protected themselves. Like, to reinforce the thing of like, think this through. Don't make a rash decision with the risk, which helps again drive why many of these people don't necessarily make the risk for quite a while.
Yep. And he comes back, even though he's got his suit of armor, he comes back somewhat battle damaged.
Yeah.
So that is even more proof in the pudding to take him seriously.
Well, and the other thing he asks is like, so many wasted wishes out there. What does it mean? Only two things matter: family and survival. When you wish, think of the world that is, not the world that was. And that's what we talked about before. It's like you're now, the wishes that seemed important before this started happening aren't really important in this new world. Like, you need to reevaluate what is going on. And to that end, we get, the next day, Robbie makes the boy, the 12-year-old, makes his wish, which is pretty well thought out, but also like totally a kid wish. Like, he's basically Superman plus. I mean, it's Superman, it's Cable, he's got the metal arm, it's he's basically given himself everything he can think of.
It's every 12-year-old comic book junkie's dream.
Yeah.
Yep. Mask and everything.
Yeah, and we see that he, like, as we go through this, we see, and of course he's not the only one that, like, as he immediately comes across other superheroes, that this is, but we see that he did a pretty good job of thinking this through as we go through this, that he's made himself basically invulnerable. Yeah. Like, I love the tiny head. It's still got the 12-year-old head. But yeah, and of course, instantly he runs into, as we move into issue 4 and we move into like him running into other superheroes here as we move away from the first 8 days. And although we don't, it's kind of the mid issue that we go the first 8 months, isn't it? Or do we stay first 8 weeks? Sorry, I forget when we get that.
Yeah, the first page of issue 4, we're in week 2.
Yeah, we're in week 2. So we go to the first 8 weeks. Did that not get a page? Maybe
that was the beginning of 3. No, not 3, but 2.
Somewhere in here. Anyway, yeah. So we've moved from days. We're moving into weeks now, and we see that as he's out there trying to find a safe space for his parents and him, that of course people also use their wishes to become supervillains. It's just like, you know.
And pretty ridiculous looking supervillain at that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, one of the heroes is Betty Pineapple. I mean, come on. What is like? Well, you mean Chop Saw and the Deboner, and Wargrass? Yeah, there's some. The Living Zoo. There's some. Yeah, there's some.
The Sly.
Yeah. There is some very ridiculous kind of heroes and villain kind of thing. And I love how he's like even the other people like misinterpret what he's trying to go with his name. He's like, you know, I'm a son, and like it's about being the good son is basically where he's coming from. It's like, right. Oh, the son, like you know,
Sun boy,
Sun man,
yeah,
yeah.
I have to say this when we get into this is where, for me, things start to fall apart.
Okay.
And I think it's because everything has been so grounded until now. We literally haven't followed anybody that has flown until we get to this part.
Right.
So we've gone through 3 issues where every character's feet are on the ground, and then we get, you know, the first several pages of issue 4 are superhero battles.
Right. But I do think, like, we get the nice page at the end of this, like with the bartender going, a bunch of wackadoos playing dress up out in the sky, you know, and it's appropriate that the person that introduces us to the craziness that's happening out there is the kid. Like,
right.
Because he made a very kid wish. And he's dealing with a bunch of other people that have made chaotic and immature wishes at this point.
And I wonder how many of those were kids.
And as we see when one of the villains wins and a bunch of his fellow heroes die, the kid's like, well, I was only 11. Like, that's been the leader and like he was looking up to as a grown up. And yeah, the part where as Cali Comics says, I'm a kid too, you know, and it's like, and we see but there also gets to be in this issue some pressure. For the first time, we start seeing pressure on people who haven't made their wish by other people. Like, you still have your wish, make it for me. Like, you know, like bring my son back or protect my son. And the genie's like, oh, well, we can tell you what's happening with him. Like, you don't have to. But we get our first kind of glimpse of the kind of things that are going to happen here as, you know, people start realizing the value, maybe more so the really value of the wishes, and like having one makes you a target as you go through this world going forward.
Yeah.
So any thoughts there? Because we do get the mother who's a remnant, who's there but not really there. It's like, Alex, you know, you guys make your wish. You gotta help my son. And it's like, no, he's fine. And, you know, but then so is there anything else in here before we get to the reveal that we get at the end of this issue? Which is, well, I guess it's not even getting close to the end of the issue. Yeah, the first 8 weeks panel doesn't come to the end of the issue.
Yeah, and that was, I noticed then at the end of the first 8 weeks, they're down to 1 billion people and half a billion wishes.
Yeah.
Genius.
Well, you see, there's just a whole bunch of destruction and just chaos.
Oh, yeah.
And we get, and at this point, as we're moving into this, he's like, the bartender gives the reveal at week 8. He's like, I'm a genie. So what did you think of this reveal here, Adam? What did you think of the reveal of our bartender is actually a genie?
That kind of surprised me. I did not see that coming. It kind of, made me understand his, wish that I thought he had just, maybe ran through scenarios in his head being a prepper, that if I ever get one wish from a genie, I'm going to wish for,
What about you, Jacob? What do you think of this reveal that our bartender is actually a genie?
It felt like a cop out to some extent, where it's like, okay, you've gotten us this far, and then how can a human also be a genie?
Right. Well, he even says, like he immediately says, the last genie, to be more precise. It's like, wait, there's all kinds of genies. What is going on here?
Yeah. This whole issue, well, the end of last issue and then this issue, this is where I really started to feel bogged down in the story. Yeah. And because just it's not, I think it was two things. The tone changed, but we also get, like we said, the art changes so much with big battle scenes like this, where you get a lot more color involved and things like that.
Yeah.
But then the reveal of this big kind of switcheroo on us, that the guy that was that wise at the beginning, now we realize that, we, like Adam said, we realize now why that original wish made so much sense.
Yeah. And he does give us, basically, we're moving into a different phase of this thing, because he's explaining why he's there, why he's the last genie. He granted the last wish the last time, so he stays. Mm-hmm. And he's like, it's been all the short-sighted people have made their wishes. Now what's left is the planners, the strategists, that we're moving into a new phase. And we get, and we basically, at the end of this, Robbie stumbles onto another haven of a sort that has been found after basically the world explodes, and there's like what they call it later, the scourge, mm-hmm. or something that like wipes out most of the population. So what do you think of this? So J-Hood, you were not as well. First, we get, as we kick off issue 5, we get 1980, and it's like, what? But it's kind of a different 1980, or no, sorry, never mind. This is we jump back, and we get the background on one of our planner strategist person that we're about to meet. What do they call it? He's like the Idea Man. What do you think about our background here of the Idea Man? Who's going to play a pretty major role, or played a pretty major role in this, is he's the one that just wiped out most of the population, and he's already gotten a ton of extra genies. As you see, they all look like him. It's like, how did he get all these extra genies? And so what do you think of our introduction to the Idea Man here, J-Hood?
Yeah, so we got at the end of the last issue, this was like the last page, right?
Right.
This was another place where I was like, okay, a more refined artist, I think, would have been able to do the expression in a way that didn't purposely leave me wondering, okay, is this guy a good guy or bad guy? I mean, I got the creepy vibe from it, but it's like the expression wasn't just right, so that I was like, I needed like the wink of the eye or something like that to not literally, but I needed some additional clues there to cement in my mind that I'm not supposed to like this guy.
Well, I mean, but maybe they didn't want you to know yet what you're supposed to think about this guy. So
and I would give him credit for that too.
Yeah.
So then the following issue, we get the kind of the backstory, like you said, of him. And I understood, picked up on it just fine. And again, I think going back to a more grounded kind of basis, I was more into it.
Yeah. So, Adam, what do you think of the introduction of the idea man here?
I'm jealous of all the battle beasts he had in 1988. I loved those and only had a couple. Sorry about that.
You're okay.
But no, it's kind of interesting to see his history and everything, and sort of get where he's coming from. And
so I do think it's interesting. I do have one little bit of an quibble with this whole thing is, like, I get that people haven't believed in him. So he makes the wish of, I wish people would believe in me. That leads him to here. So obviously people believe in him. But the backstory they established over these first few pages doesn't lead me to believe that he's smart enough to do what he then does. Like, his ideas that he's presenting in those first few pages aren't necessarily good ideas. Like, it's not that they're awful ideas, but like the way, and obviously he's treated that way, he's given less respect than maybe he deserves, but it's like, yeah, I don't know. Does that make sense to me? To you guys, where I'm coming from? It's like, it doesn't set him up to be actually this great misunderstood thinker.
Mm-hmm.
It sets him up to be a guy that people don't respect and don't listen to his ideas, but doesn't necessarily have great ideas either. But yeah, so I did feel a little disconnect there. But yeah, so we're meeting the idea man here 3 months after G-Day, and then we're into the first 8 months at this point, and yeah, we're now down to 50 million people and 400,000 genies.
Mm-hmm.
After 8 months,
yeah,
that's
which
probably makes halfway decent sense, because so many of them would be defensive use one time,
Yeah. Well, at this point, yeah, we've moved into a different stage where we got a guy like this who's basically used his initial wish to then use the wishes of others because they believe in him to build this safe haven to accumulate. Well, you want to come here, you got to give your wish to me. You want to be safe, you got to give your wish to me. You use these other people, so you're getting. Yeah, look at the number of wishes he's got that are now his.
And that's one part where I maybe I didn't read it close enough, or there wasn't enough there to explain how that process worked, where you could actually hand off your genie to someone else.
I mean, we see how the other group, the three band members, do it later. Like,
they use the wish to do that,
but they have to use a wish to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly, he's gotten somebody to make a wish that allows people to grant him wishes. Grant them other people's. I don't know how he's doing it. Yeah,
and they've been so kind of overtly clear with what the rules are up until this point.
Yeah, that they're not letting. So, but we also see that he's there's lawyers, and he's figured out how to word things very specifically. So he's been basically breaking the rules.
But one thing that I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Got me and wondered about is so he's got all these wishes. If something happens to the person that gave it to him, what happens to the wish?
Yeah,
does it disappear like they do whenever they die and they haven't used it?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Or did it actually become his? Because they look like him now. But,
yeah, they do all look like him now.
Yeah,
they're not clear about how he's getting control of all these wishes.
To me,
for that matter, these other people get control of all these wishes.
To me, that was the part that bothered me the most about the story.
Yeah.
So I think there's two parts there too. It's how is he getting the genies the other people's wishes. And then also up until this point, we've been talking about how the genies interact with people, and they have some amount of input on how they're interpreting the wishes. So they would have to be cooperating with him to some extent for other people's wishes to work for, through him. So I don't see how they would be that amenable to that kind of situation either.
Right. Well, I mean, was it Brian's genie kind of explained, he's like, well, generally speaking, you're right. We don't do that kind of thing, but sometimes people word the wish so precisely that it takes away our agency to do as we see fit. Like, and we see that later as he makes a wish later in this issue where it just keeps going. Like, he talks for like 8 hours, like the wording he's got, like, so that they can't get around it. He's using legalese to like try to pin the genie into a corner that it has no wiggle room left.
Right.
The other thing that happens in this issue that's big is we see the birth of the Wang's daughter, and two things there. We realize that, well, we'd already seen that there was the little genie kind of floating with her, that like the baby in the womb got a genie. But we also see, like, when there appears to be complications with the pregnancy, again, demanding that Brian and Alex use their wish to help the mother. And then they both kind of freeze. And it's the first thing we get kind of where we get the explanation of wish lock. Like, the possibility, you've now like thought about the possibilities that it like makes it harder to actually make the wish the longer you wait.
The older I get, the more wish locks I get day to day.
Yeah. So what did you think about that particular reveal, that like it actually becomes harder to make the wish the longer you wait? You become more indecisive about it.
That makes sense, because I mean, if you let yourself question something that you plan on doing for long enough, it gets harder to make it, because you keep looking at every single little detail and no, it's not quite right now. No, it's not,
Yeah, I'm serious. Day to day, if I've got too much on my mind, I get to the point where I just can't think straight anymore. So yeah, I totally relate to that kind of phenomenon going on.
And having the ability to make a life-altering, world-altering choice would just amplify that.
Yep. Especially, and then you've got the emergency situation going on in this particular case.
Right. That makes it even harder for them to react. So you talked about earlier, like, whether or not we were supposed to like the Idea Man. And we get his wish, and he makes this very complicated, specific wish, but it appears to be like restoring the planet to what it should be, just without all the people. So it appears to be this very generous wish, very so what did you think of him when you got to the end of this, that when he made this particular wish? Because at this point, we don't know that he's the one that actually destroyed it in the first place.
Right.
So what did you think of that particular wish? Or what did you think of him, Ehud? Because you were saying, you didn't know what you were supposed to think of him on that first page.
Yeah, I think this goes back to like the little origin story, like you said, where it's like in his origin story, he wasn't this intelligent.
Right.
He didn't think this deeply about things, or maybe he did, and he was just kind of overestimated what his thoughts were, or his ideas were. But at this point, he's smart enough to, like you said, get lawyers involved to help him construct these wishes, which has become like a little cottage industry itself, I think.
Yeah, because later
it doesn't seem like peas and milk that he's wishing for here.
No, for sure not. But what it allows for here, as we get to the end of this issue, is it allows for our people in the bar to finally go their separate ways and move through their lives away from the bar. We see the Wangs leave. We see the band members leave. Well, they leave first because they're, after they didn't make the wish to save her, and even though it worked out, and the Wangs leave, and then we see Robbie finally come back for his parents. So what do you think as we move into issue 6 of the outside world that these people are exploring and living in as we go through this? We spend a lot of time in this first part of issue 6 with Daisy and Aaron and Brian. What did you think of kind of the outside world? And we do get here, we're now into the first 8 years. 32 million and only 300,000 wishes left, but so what do you think about their exploring the rest of the world? Adam?
Well, it made, quite a bit of sense in that last little bit, whenever they're first going out, and it's kind of calmed down some.
Mm-hmm.
Because all the wildness for the most part is the wildfires have burned out, for lack of a better term,
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, anybody who hasn't used their wish at this point isn't going to use it on something stupid. It's like
Mm-hmm.
J-Hood, what do you think about as they move out into the world?
Yeah, I mean, they kind of worked it back to the status quo of not necessarily what the world was like originally, but it definitely is a much more inhabitable environment, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And at this point, as I was reading it, I'm just like, okay, essentially by the end of this issue, like, this seems like the happy ending. So at this point, I'm wondering, okay, we've got issues 6, 7, and 8 left to go. Where are we going from here?
Well, it sort of seems like that. It seems like the three, the 3 band members find a place, at least for a while, that they can go and are safe. We see the family finds a place that they can go and are safe, at least until we get to year 7. But the lady who created the first place passes away, so they're back on the move, and their daughter's finally getting old enough that she could potentially make her wish, and they're like, ooh, and people are getting nervous about what she might do.
Mm-hmm.
But then we also see that Robbie, who went to the Idea Man to basically, because he didn't want to fight no more, is now still fighting to take out other havens. That it's like, well, what? But why? We don't get why they're attacking these other places. So what do you guys think of those kind of, I guess first the parents' decision with the daughter's wish now that she's about to be old enough to make a wish. J-Hood, what do you think about where they go here?
I think it's one of the many wise decisions in the story, and it definitely helps to kind of help play out in the rest of the story as well, as far as the daughter's life going forward and things like that. It was incredibly logical, and I'd have been surprised if they didn't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're very much. I feel like they're very much fall a little bit into the stereotype that we see of the Asian parents of that. We're gonna control your life until you're ready. There's a stereotype there.
Set you up for the perfect, and
Yeah. And they're very much kind of falling into that. The other reveal we get to the end of this is in year 8. Our band finally makes it to Fun City and does everything they can to try to make it into Fun City based on their art. They're like, we're as good as we're ever going to be. And they don't. What did you think when they didn't make it? Before we get to what they do after they don't make it in, what did you guys think when they didn't make it?
I think having followed them through the whole story and known how much they've been working on their stuff, and how much time they put into it and effort they put into it, I was probably as disappointed as they were
Yeah.
that they weren't good enough to make it in.
Were they not good enough? But, or, again, it's like art is so subjective. And it's just these three people are just like, because they're just like, yeah, you're just not what we're looking for. It's not that they're good or bad. It's just you're not what we're looking for. It's like, what? But go ahead, Adam. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, I agree. And it, was heartbreaking. But then, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm wondering if the three critics basically let anyone in unless they have genies.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the feeling I was getting too.
There's more going on here than. Well, there's also show business, which is cutthroat to the core anyway. But so we get that Daisy reveals that Brian and Alex, I keep calling him Aaron, but Brian and Alex still have their genies, and which leads to Brian making his wish. What did you think about Brian's wish?
You can tell that he and Alex had worked on that for a while.
Yeah.
To, get them all in if need be,
they prepped for this.
Yeah. They put a lot of thought into that.
What about you, Jay Hood? What did you think of this wish and this combined genie that we get, like that has all three of their features?
Right. Yeah, I was kind of, I don't want to say shocked that they didn't go ahead and trade one or both of them to make it into the city.
Yeah. Well, they did. They traded one of them in to basically give the three of them control of a genie,
right?
So that they all have to get it.
The city met the rules of letting them in,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they sort of did trade one in to do this, but
yeah, they had to sacrifice one. Yeah, I like the idea of the genie that was the result that does have all three of their stylistic components to them.
Yeah, for sure. I thought that was a cool addition, and
even the color
before they explain what they're thinking and why. Yeah.
I even like the fact that they went with three kind of bands of color to make it even more distinctive. We've seen so many genies up until this point that they're not that like we said they all have their own features, but
they've all been blue.
Yeah, but this one really stands apart from them.
So they find their place to Fun City. We move into issue 7 here, and we see the Wangs trying to make it to their place, headed to South America, trying to find their place where they can be safe. Now that she's going to be old enough to get her wish, and we even see on the journey, she turns 8, and the genie's like, okay, and here's the deal, and you can make a wish, and she's like, instantly. I wish, right that second.
Yep.
If you look in the background, after the mom's like, no, the genie's like, oh, I was just fixing to get to make a wish.
Yeah. So,
and it couldn't have happened at a more opportune time where they're battling or trying to navigate around this woman that has become one with the sea as part of her wish. So, the visuals of that were pretty astounding.
Yeah, they really were. Here's the thing. I will go back on this. Is I do think they're making a wise decision to go to a place where she can't. Basically, they're going to El Futuro, which is a place where she won't be able to, was set up by the guy we've seen before, and she won't be able to use her wish without their permission. and so she can't use it until she reaches a certain age without their permission. Like, it's where they're trying to go.
Mm-hmm.
But and we see the result of that as we move forward is the resentment she has toward them for making this decision. Like, I think they're making a wise decision, but it doesn't seem like they've talked to her.
Right.
Like, which I feel like is where they're making a mistake, is they haven't like explained what they're doing and why, and like, hey, this is what this is. This is going to be this is a big responsibility. You can't just make like, and I get she's 8 or 7, like in the lead up, and I don't have kids. You guys have kids, so I'll ask you, like, what do you think of their decision to not really? Because it's pretty clear they never talked to her about any of this, or even that she was getting a wish. Because she's like super surprised when the genie's explaining it to her. What do you think about that choice?
I think you'd have to, you know, maybe not necessarily, you know, grind it into them every day, but say, you know, at some point in time, you're going to have, you know, an opportunity to make a wish. You shouldn't just do it right off the bat, you know. That needs to be, you know, you need to make sure you're doing the, you know, the right thing.
I think it's an old-fashioned notion to not talk about it. I mean, it's similar to puberty. You talk to your kids about puberty because you know they're going to run into it. I mean, she's definitely younger than that, but still, she should know that, you know, this is coming, and this is, and it's part of even like, you know, instilling your belief system into your children. You know, just helping them understand how you navigate the world, you know, whether it's you've got, you know, a religion or a spiritual, you know, kind of thing that you follow, or your lifestyle is, but yeah, you kind of explain it as you go so they understand why we're doing these things.
Well, and you know, one of the opportunities would have been whenever anytime he had to don the suit, you know, explain that
that's what he used his wish for and why he did it.
That's what he used his wish for and why he used it and how he came to that decision, and that he didn't come to it lightly, and you know, it's protected him, but it's also, you know, caused him grief, you know.
So yeah, because we see as they get in here and basically, like, as they enter the city, like, earmuffs go on her genie, and the genie can't hear her now, so she can't. Like, the genie is blocked from her making a wish without their parents or guardians' consent. She's like, but because she, like, even when the genie explains it to her, she's like, oh wow, like they've clearly not prepped her.
And I think she's an even bigger disadvantage from the standpoint of she doesn't have like the Google factor that everyone else has that gets to talk to their genie.
Yeah, because she doesn't. You're right. She doesn't. Like, it's the one that the genie that's explained this to her is mom's. Mom's genie is the one trying to explain to her what's going on, because she doesn't even get to talk to her genie. All right. Well, that leads us into the next issue, which is the first 8 decades, and now we're down to 18 million people and 200,000 wishes. It's really slow. Like, the declines continue, but it's really slow. And we see the idea man is meeting with the exactitude, basically lawyers.
Population 25.
Yeah, only 25. I mean, I love the genies, the lawyers.
Yeah, they're giant. They represent their egos.
Yeah, for sure.
They're out there playing tennis and golf in their full dress attire.
Yeah. And I love this whole sequence where, like, he's finally met with somebody that doesn't just instantly have to believe in him, and they're like, which means in so facto we believe in everything and therefore nothing. You know, he runs into lawyers, which you just can't.
We're lawyers. We cultivate a skill to allow us to believe in whatever our client needs us to believe in.
Yeah. And basically. And it's basically they're stopping him from taking out all the havens. And we get, like, just one genie and I can get rid of all the other havens. And it's like, why is he trying to destroy all the other havens? Which we never really get an explanation for, other than it seems to be like he's trying to punish anybody that's not completely dependent on him at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that he's clearly this is our first real reveal of just how dark and evil he is in terms of like how bitter he is about what happened before.
Mm-hmm.
Like he now has all this power. He's got all these people that believe in him, but anybody that doesn't, that's not relying on him, has to go. So what do you think about this sequence? Because like when you make the lawyers not be the most evil person in the room, like,
You're pretty evil.
Yeah. And we even see Robbie like taken aback, but he's still standing by like this guy. So obviously because the wish is making him believe. So what do you think about this here? You guys got any thoughts?
I love the visual where all the genies come out around the lawyer there. I don't know what it is about that. I just thought it was cool.
Just ready to attack.
Mm-hmm. But so it also so this guy figured it out where he's like, okay, there's some way that I can collect other people's genies and therefore, take captive of their wishes. But he's not the only one.
Right.
So
yeah.
How is it that anyone would have learned about this?
Yeah, I don't know. Again, well, it's basically like they're basically, well, we'll work for people, but you can only pay us in your wishes. So, like, I feel like the genius should be like, no, like if I go.
You know what it is? He had lawyers working for him. They learned the trick, and then they took off and started their own thing.
Yeah, that's basically, he had the lawyers probably. But I'm still trying to get back to how he figured it out. Because, like, I feel like if I just went, I want to give my wish to Adam. Like.
And that would be your wish.
You'd be like, no, it's your wish. Like, you would have to wish it. Like, otherwise, and then in which case the wish would, I guess you could wish it. Like, I wish for Adam to have a wish. They haven't really said that was against it. Or for Adam to have this wish. I don't know. Like, maybe that's how they're doing it. But yeah, I don't know. They do not.
There's probably some contract, the legal worked up that he burned one genie to allow people to give him their wishes.
Yeah, that's probably what happened. Is he got one person for protection to give him to use their wish to make it where he could get wishes.
Mm-hmm. But that's just assuming that's that for some reason that part bothers me more than just about any other part in the book.
So we jump to year 15 and we see a rebellious teenager who's now no longer going by Ting Su, her Chinese name, but she's now Betty. Mm-hmm. She's like, screw it, and we see just how bitter she is that she still can't use her wish, that her parents have locked it down, and it's basically like, and they've lied to a certain degree. They've discovered, the other teenagers have discovered they've lied to them, because it used to be, they're like, we can't get our wish till we're 25, and they're like, you know how old you used to be a soldier and to vote? Only 18, and like they're finding out the truth, and the other thing that we get here is Mom has repeatedly has on multiple occasions, because she's a remnant, can see through the idea man. And when Dad finally passes away, before she disappears, she gets Robbie to see the truth.
Yep.
What did you think about this sequence with Robbie and his parents? Jay Hood, I'll let you go first this time.
Yeah, I thought it was sad, but it goes with what they're doing as far as time progressing. It's one of these moments that you knew way back at the beginning, so this was gonna happen at some point, whether within the context of the story or not. But yeah, the fact that she's still there, so the remnant hangs around for a certain amount of time, so she's able to kind of talk to him and convince him before she disappears again.
I mean, yeah, she's his mother till the end, like even as a remnant. Adam, what about you? What do you think of this sequence?
It was pretty heart-wrenching, but I mean, you could kind of see it coming because it wasn't like it happened in the first month or year or something like that. What was it, about 15 years or so by now, 16, something like that. Yeah. So he wasn't
20. I think it's 20 years.
20. Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, that'd put him, about the age, 60 or so, just get, something like that.
Well, it's clear it's a heart attack. It's not old age. It's, it's because it's sudden and yeah.
But he is older in heart attack, and that's, a large concern of.
Yeah. I mean, it still takes the most people, still what gets most of us is, so heart disease is still the big one out there. But I love how, like, she's using her final moments to try to bring him to his senses to see the truth. And, like, no more than is she gone, and here he comes. He's like, sorry for your loss, but we need you. Come on. Like, there's no real empathy at all toward, he's just using this kid continuing to use now this man as a weapon. Like, he's been using him as a weapon for his own ends for 20 years at this point. And then we jump back to El Futuro, where we see, and they're like trying to and they're actually, because they're worried about being attacked by the Idea Man, they're talking about taking the kids' wishes for even longer. Like, we're going to, we told them 25, but we're going to make it longer. We can't let them use them because we need them. And which, again, they're doing this without talking to them.
Yeah.
Like, which we're going to see is ultimately what ends up costing us, because, like, they're no longer, at least at this point, they're no longer kids, and they're still not treating them. They're not educating them and bringing them through, like, why did we do this, and why are we still doing this, and why do we still need your wishes? And
what do you think your wish would be?
Yeah. Like, there's no conversation between the parents in this El Futuro and the kids that have the wishes.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, before we get this showdown, the lawyers decide they're going after Idea Man. And it basically comes down to, like, it's basically he's got them automatically triggered if there's an attack to, like, the wish is used to counteract the attack. And so you see all of these genies going through and
all armored up
and ready to defend, and basically, and in the end, he's down to 3. And I love how the genies are just so happy. Yeah. I love the genie that's like, oh, he's like, I got to execute my grand. Hold that thought. The genie's like, wish I could say it's been a pleasure. Like the genies do not like this guy at all. Like, which is the first time we've seen a genie, like, not like its master.
Yep.
Like, but a lot of them are ready to be used.
Yeah.
And then to just be captured with that many other ones and just sort of stockpiled would have to be a really annoying.
They clearly have seen, like, they talked about, they don't like being used the way this guy is using them either.
Yeah.
It's not just that they're ready to be used. It's like they don't like the way.
Yeah, they want to be used for something good or whimsical, at least.
So we see he's down to 3 genies in the end. He has more genies than the lawyers did. And so what do you think of his revenge on the lawyers? I think that's I thought that was actually pretty funny. Like that he immediately uses one of his wishes not to kill them, but to do many ways worse. What did you think of his, I wish all those smart-ass lawyers and exactitude, every last one of them would be stupid, provided, however, they remember what it was like to be smart.
The genie thought it was kind of funny, too.
I think the genie actually liked that one.
But beautiful, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let no one say you're not an artist.
Yeah. Ugly but beautiful too. Yes, no one's. I mean, it is a ultimate revenge for people that think they're smart. It's like. I mean, I feel like it's a fitting fate for a group of lawyers, scumbag lawyers like those are, for sure.
I mean, it's hard to root for the lawyers,
Yeah, no, you're not going to root. Even against this guy, it's hard to root for the lawyers.
Yep. So this guy becomes the villain we're rooting for in the end.
Yeah. So, which leads to his, basically, and you wonder what he's done if he hasn't had somebody infiltrate El Futuro to kind of trigger this. Because he says to Robbie, he's like, we need to get some more wishes. And we jump to a little bit in the future, like, because this is what, year 23. So it's a little bit that he hasn't tried to use somebody to destabilize El Futuro in the meantime, because we see a couple years later, like, the kids are like, we're leaving, we're taking our wishes and going. And in the meantime, I guess we do get a page here. We see that Brian has passed away, and we see that the reason Brian wasn't interested is he had a husband. He was, that we find out why Brian was not interested originally, that it really would have been against his will. And the genie, you see the genie fade to just 2, like go from 3 to 2, like in terms of its perspective.
Yep.
But yeah, we see these kids that they haven't, some of which, I mean, even the daughter's now 26 years old or whatever. Like, it's 26, so she's 26 years old or 25 years old, and they still haven't let them use their wishes. They all, even the ones we'd seen before that were older than her, still have earmuffs on their wishes. Like, and
I'd be rebelling at that point too.
Yeah. I mean, they're like, we're out. We're leaving. We're taking our wishes with us. And they're like, yeah, we're just going to be free. Of course, the instant they leave, which tells me that there's clearly something, like, he's clearly planned this. Like, he's been a part of what's going on here. Because the instant they leave, they launch the attack. Like, he's got insider information. And, like, yeah, the earmuffs come off the genies because clearly the kid's father passed away, and we see he's about to do it again because they don't have a choice. His wish makes them believe him. Like, but Robbie finally, like, steps up. So what do you think of this twist of Robbie finally getting the better of the idea man here? Dave Harrison.
I was happy to see it. It kind of surprised me a little bit because I didn't know if he ever would.
Yeah.
I didn't know if the wool was too thick that he had pulled over his eyes, or if,
Well, obviously, if mom doesn't say something, probably not.
No.
Right.
Well, it still took him, several years later. And
well, it took him several years later to seize his opportunity. Like, because he could just... Go ahead.
I think, a lot of the turning point was, whenever the idea man realized he was going to, whenever he realized the idea man was going to take all the other genies and stuff, that was, he was like, no, you're not going to do this to anybody else,
Well, I mean, he even says here, though, he's like, what is it? He says, hang on. He's like, I doubt it, Floyd. You used a wish to have all those aliens attack El Futuro. You've only got one left. Here's my theory. Like, he's been waiting till he was down to one wish. Like, here's my theory, or waiting for an opportunity where he could use it. He's like, I don't think you can use it. He was looking for an opening too. And he knew, like I said, if he got those kids, control those kids' wishes, that he wasn't going to maybe get that opportunity again.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, how did we feel about it? I felt like the genie in the background with the popcorn.
I didn't even register that until you said that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that he ended up getting wish locked in the end. So
Yeah.
he had the one wish left and he couldn't use it because he got brain freeze.
Well, and I love the genie. It's like, oh, when he's like, I wish, and he gets thrown into outer space and he can't speak anymore, so he can't actually wish. He's like, the genie's like, oh, dang, so close, but all things considered, you've had more than your share. He fist bumps the moon. I love that the moon is still a monster through all of this. That wish is still going. Of all the wishes to still be going, that one is. But on the sad side of things, we see the death of her parents, and but we also get another wish. We get, I wish my daughter will survive. So, which probably just means this attack, but the genie's take is immortality, as we're going to find out as we go forward. But we also see Robbie return, and
go
ahead.
Don't we think that the mother should have known better at that point to refine her wish so that it wasn't immortality?
Yeah, but she's also dying in that moment,
right?
Because so how much is she the husband is dead? How much is can she really think through what she's saying at that point?
It's true.
So, but I get your point. It's it is a pretty, after all these years, to leave that open-ended of a wish.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty odd. Also called plot. What about you, Damon? What do you think of just this whole sequence here? Anything else you want to point out as we get through this? Because we're starting to get to the end here. The end of issue 7, and we get Robbie coming back and basically continuing to do what he's done, which is protect people, but this time really protect them and not, under this other guy.
One line he said that made me, that I just now noticed is the Idea Man was like, but don't you believe me? And he replies back, buddy, since my mom and dad died, I don't believe in anything.
Yeah.
Before he tosses it. And I was like, oh, well, that's
But he does, he promises, he comes down and all the survivors is I'll keep you all safe. And we see at the end of this, year 80, first we see at year 45, we see Alex pass. And now Daisy has another wish if she wants to use it. And he's you see, the genie even asked her, what will you do with it? Looks like I'm all yours. What will you do now? She's like, I wouldn't want to waste such a wonderful gift. So she doesn't, she's not really interested in using it either. And then we see that,
interesting turn from her using her in the first 8 seconds.
Right.
Yeah. And then we see that Robbie, we jump from year 45 to year 80. And Robbie finally passes away, and they're like, thank you for keeping your promise. And they're like, what do you do now, Betty? And she's like, I'm going to live free. And so we see this great sequence of her exploring the world with her genie, and Daisy flying away from Funland on a flying unicorn. And we get to issue 8 and the last 8 centuries. So we're now 800 years in the future, or no, the last 8 centuries. So we're 800 years in the past, or 8 since before this all started. Human population 360 million. Genie Population 2, and we finally get the backstory of our bartender.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about the bartender's backstory as he explains his role through history, like as he's trying to figure out what he's supposed to be doing there and why he's there? And good grief, we went longer than I realized. But, yeah, there's a lot here, and we're doing 8 issues. But, so what did you think that he's, Vlad the Impaler, and he was, all these different things. He started the plague, and like, what did you think about our bartender here as we learned the truth before a couple hundred years before becoming a bartender? What did you guys think of his story?
I mean, having the story, the story in general wrapped up at the end of the last issue. I mean, I think it was a great way to go back and kind of, not necessarily clarify, but expound upon everything we've experienced up until this point. It gives us all the context that's needed to have a good payoff for what we've read so far.
Yeah. Adam, what about you? What did you think of the bartender story?
I mean, it was just kind of interesting to see all the different things they had him do throughout history, like Vlad and
well, I love the vampire thing. You can't kill him.
Yeah.
I mean, he becomes like the Forrest Gump of the.
Yeah.
For sure.
He happens to be in the right place at the right time a lot through history.
And then we get the reveal here part of the way through is that, like, why is he telling his story? He's telling it to Daisy. She's found her way back to the bar 700 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And she's still alive and she still has her wish. And yeah, she's telling him everything. And he actually asked, he's like, he talks about that he was looking for the perfect wish. And she's like, well, did you find it? And he's like, yeah, but he's like, it's not my place.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a genie. He's like, I'm not actually one of you. And, but he explains what the genies are sort of why they're there, like trying to help us reach a higher, better way, but that it hasn't really worked.
Right.
Like all the different time, we have no idea how many cycles we've been through, like at this point. And we see like first 8 centuries and we're down to, the population is 12 million, genie population 3. So that was what she's basically been in the bar at this point because we go to 800 years after G-Day, and Daisy's basically been in the bar for 100 years just hanging out with me.
Yeah.
But look who walks into the bar here is our armor. She went back and got Dad's armor, and Betty or Zhang Ting Shu returns to where she was born, and she's gonna kill her because she wants her wish, which is a big difference from the last time we've seen her. That she's actually like hunting people for wishes. What did you guys think of this reveal of what's become of Betty?
I mean, I think my thing was like, okay, what has she gone and done that she's kind of done this heel turn?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Adam? What do you think?
It was kind of the same. It kind of threw me for a loop a little bit, because she didn't seem like the kind that would, do that as, from her history, and then, the way she lived in the city after she got a wish and didn't, change for that. But I meant, I guess 800 years is a little taxing on a person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you even hear her say, like, my parents use their wishes to protect me, to make sure I use my wish, for something important. And she's like, And I realized the only way for it to really be permanent was if it was the last one. She's like, so, and as they're having a conversation, it's like, she's like, and it started out noble and then it became what it became, which is very easy to see how that could happen. Like, you're trying to do something right and then suddenly you're down a path that you didn't intend. And, as they continue their conversation, she comes to the realization, and I love that she's like, what about you? So I never used mine. Why didn't you use, hey, genies, why did Daisy never use her wish? And it's like, because she had enough. Like, she got everything she wanted from her time with Brian and Alex and, the life that she led, that she was okay. Must be pretty nice, for someone who wasted their wish sort of at the beginning to just be like, pretty content. What did you think of that? Like this whole conversation and this reveal that, she had enough, that she was okay. That's why she never used it.
It's just, such a gigantic turn from somebody, again, that used their original wish in the first seconds to make someone love her that wouldn't have, ever normally. And had that wish, went, it would have been a totally different story for her.
That's true.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that we've got, essentially ended up with two immortals,
Yeah.
Well, three, including the bartender.
So we get that reveal from her, and then we get Betty talking about who's making the last wish and her coming to the realization she comes to. What did you think about that, Jay? Her decision.
So she wishes that she didn't have the wish, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She basically gives it away. She's like, I walked in here and pulled a gun on you and you offered me a drink and I didn't know anything about the world before. How can I make the new one better? Because I never saw the world before the genies came. And so, yeah, she basically just gives up her wish so that Daisy ends up with the last wish. And her genie even hugs her. Like, like this is the right choice. The genie sees that it's the right choice. So what did you think of her decision and her getting to this place in the end?
I don't know. I think as a reader of the story this far, I probably was rooting for her to live on as like the kind of the heir of the story, right. The child that was born during the story would be the one to live the longest.
Right.
So it is a bit ironic that that's kind of how it was resolved.
So it's not her though, but it's. What about you, Damaris? Before I move on to the end
at this time, it was interesting that the person that was, one of probably the last ones born to have a wish was also there with probably one of the first people to make a wish.
Yeah. So yeah, the contrast there of like literally the last person to make a wish or have to use their wish, and then the person that was one of the first, like you said, like the bartender beat her, but other than that, not hardly anybody did. And so yeah, Daisy gets the last wish, and so what do you think about? The storytelling choice for her, this person that initially wasted their wish on something selfish and to get to make the last wish and the wish that she ultimately makes. Jay.
Yeah, it's. I don't want to say it's like the biggest opportunity for a redemption, but it kind of is because she really did waste her wish at the beginning and is the one that survives to the end to kind of go on to become the next the first genie, or she's the last genie, so she'll be the first in the new
Well,
universe.
I mean, basically, the implication here is that she made the perfect wish because
Perfect
we
wish.
get 8 billion and no genies.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah, there you go.
And then, it said on the page before that she had, after she gave her wish, it says perfect. And then down below that, the wish is the genie's turning into the word wish. So,
yeah. What about you, Adam? What did you think of her wish?
Well, I thought it was a really good way to end the series. And, was a, redemption story for her.
Yeah.
And sort of all of humanity to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
She went from being very incredibly selfish at the beginning with her first wish to being the total opposite of that, the most giving.
And you could see that, she constantly built that way through the whole book.
Yeah, you see how she gets to where she is, that she makes this wish. Like the path that she takes, and how she gets there. And and she even says it's the same wish, like I'm wishing for the same thing, but in a completely different way.
Mm-hmm.
And so final thoughts on 8 Billion Genies, and I'll get you out of here after 2 hours. I apologize. We went this long, but Adam, final thoughts on.
I really liked it. It was thought-provoking, but not heavy. Entertaining, but not, just a slugfest and stuff the whole time too. It had a good mix of a lot of things that I like from comic books. It wasn't as simple as, Invincible and just a, smash, I still love that book, but, and then, it wasn't as in-depth and deep and complicated as Monstrous.
Yeah.
Which,
if you don't know, those are the two
that I've covered on. And so, which are kind of two, opposite ends. And I loved them both.
Yeah.
But to me, this is better than both because it's sort of in the middle. And it has, it has parts of both to make a really good story.
Mm-hmm.
Jacob, what about you?
I think in the end, I'm very glad for having read it. I really enjoyed the original kind of premise of the whole thing, and I like the fact that there's a clever thought behind it for sure. It's probably not something that I feel like I need to reread again. I'll probably pass it along because as much as I've heard other people really enjoy it, I think anybody else besides old crotchety J Hood will probably like it better. And I like it more than I don't. I guess I should say it's not that I hate it. I don't. Yeah. But it's not something that I'm not even gonna say it's not memorable because it is. But I've read it and I don't feel like I need to read it again.
Right. And I can kind of see that because, I don't foresee myself rereading it anytime soon. Right. Just because it's, not something real deep or stuff like that, but it was a good book and, in my opinion.
I mean, I think for the most part, I'm right with you guys. I think maybe I like it a little more than you guys do because I do think it's excellent. I think it is one of the better things I've read in a while. But I would agree it's not something that I'm going to pour over, but it would be highly recommend and be this is worth the read. I think it is a very original story. I think it hits a lot of the good points. I do think it at times in the middle, particularly when we get into some of the Robbie stuff and things, when he's just being it gets a little uneven at times in the middle and some of those middle issues. But I do think ultimately, even those parts that as you're reading them, it's a little uneven. He uses the way he ultimately tells the story, the finale and stuff. He brings all of it around and it makes it all kind of important. It makes it work. It's not as you're reading it, maybe you feel like it's getting lost a little bit, but ultimately it doesn't. It stays on the path that it needs to be on, and I do think it tells, like, it gives you the happy ending, but like for Daisy, like, it makes sense how she gets there. Like he tells a story in a way that it works. That, like, for this person, the growth we see from her makes sense and it works. And so, no, I think it's an excellent story. But I also agree with you guys. It's not. I think it's memorable, but it's not going to be one that I'm like, oh, I'm going to go. I need to read something. I'm going to grab that. Like, it's not going to be. It's not one of those, but it definitely is really, really, really good. And I'm glad I read it, and I would recommend it to anybody that's interested in comics and stuff, because I think actually they have a couple people I'm like, you should read this already, that I know that I think would really like it. So with that, we get you out of here under 2 hours. I want to thank anybody that hung out with us all this time, because we've been here for a long time, or anyone that stopped by. Kenneth, our thoughts are with you, my friend, if you're still here. I know you're getting ready to go through some tough stuff. So Gore, Old Wolf, Callie, Mr. Goblin, that John guy that was here earlier. So thanks for anybody that hung out. There's a couple people still in the chat according to the stream. So thank you for hanging out for this long. Thank you, Adam and Jamie, for hanging out with me. So I'll have to have you both back for something, hopefully in the future.
Definitely.
We're going to get out of here. Later, everybody. Bye.
See ya.